this thing we call kennel cough has had several names.
Yes.
Canine cough, infectious tracheobronchitis. Here's a new one. It's canine infectious respiratory disease. This is now the international acronym CIRD for kennel cough. So if we're going to be perfect about it, we're going to use that. But the number of organisms that fall under that umbrella has increased significantly. There are bacteria, there are viruses, and I'm sure most people have heard of the influenza virus. There's now a vaccine for that. That's part of this complex. But you're right. In Japan and in Italy and Europe, they have found a canine respiratory coronavirus. Now, this is distinct from the canine enteric coronavirus that we've had a vaccine for. A very unimpressive disease to try to immunize against because of it's not a very severe infection. But I wanted to really highlight one point, and that is that while there is a lot of background noise on the respiratory coronavirus in the dog today, that in fact the vaccine that is available for enteric coronavirus is not effective. These are two different types of coronavirus. They are not in the same family plan here.
Well, like influenza, very similar to influenza. It's like, yes. What strain of influenza are we talking about?
Right, exactly right.
Yeah. Now, let me give you this. Let me give you this scenario. I bring a 10-pound, a 12-pound Bichon Versailles to you to vaccinate, and it's a year of age. It's due for its vaccines. What respiratory diseases do you vaccinate a small dog for? How would you approach that?
Okay, the way I would do it is consistent with what we're writing into the canine guidelines today. The AHA guidelines are being rewritten. New stuff, important to hear. For respiratory disease, I'm going to say inject canine distemper, parvo, and adeno. Now, the only real respiratory issue there is canine distemper. That causes significant lung pathology and respiratory disease. You're doing that anyway. When it comes to the kennel cough side of that equation, the infectious respiratory disease, I'm going to recommend you administer vaccine to that little dog by the intranasal route. There's more and more evidence to support the fact that we are doing a better job of immunizing against Bordetella and parainfluenza when you give it intranasally compared to parenterally. This is a change. It's new. It's a little bit of a paradigm shift for veterinarians who really prefer to give it by injection. I understand that, but if you're truly concerned about immunizing the dog, then you should do it intranasally. And let me just say that the whole concept of Bordetella is taken on a new flavor lately. There's been more research on Bordetella in the last 3-4 years than there has been in the previous 20 years. And the information really supports the fact that the Bordetella bronchoseptica, which many veterinarians erroneously think is kennel cough, is really the enhancer of disease. You take a dog with parainfluenza or influenza, and they have a short-lived, quite likely a mild infection, and they may cough for 10 days. And they get over it despite us doing anything. But you add to that Bordetella. If that Bordetella does decide to become a virulent Bordetella, which they can apparently decide to do, upregulates virulence genes and expresses these proteins that are highly toxic, it's a different disease at that point. Co-infection is really critical. Bordetella is fundamental to this severity.
Now we have the influenza vaccine. And is it possible that that'll kind of come and go and you won't see it again? I mean,
What will I predict? This is me with my crystal ball, and I'm going to say that we had a tidal wave when this thing jumped out of the horse. The influenza virus jumps out of the horse almost 95, 98% intact into the dog. And then it's highly contagious from dog to dog. All right. We have this kind of tidal wave effect of a new disease in an immune susceptible population.
Naive
Population. And now, we've been through that. That was 2004, and here we are, 2010. And I don't think we're seeing outbreaks of influenza all over the country. It's not happening.